Welcome back. Tonight we're going somewhere loud, somewhere that smells of bread and fish sauce and hot stone and a million people living impossibly close together. We're going to Rome, not the Rome of emperors and senate speeches and gladiators dying dramatically in arenas. That Rome exists, but it is not the whole story. Tonight we are going to the other Rome, the real one. The one where a woman on the third floor of an apartment building argues with her neighbour about a leaking drain. Where a baker has been awake since before midnight. Where a schoolboy is being dragged through the pre-dawn streets to his lessons, furious and half asleep. Where the smell of 2,000 food stalls hits you the moment you step outside and your sandals find the gap between the stepping stones across a street that is never quite clean. Before we begin, if Midnight Chronicle has become the voice you fall asleep to, a quiet subscribe means everything. Only if it feels right, no pressure. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you are tonight and what hour it is. I always read them. Now, settle in. Let Rome come to you. Rome at night is a different city from Rome in the day. During daylight hours, wheeled vehicles are banned from the streets. The city simply cannot function if carts are trying to move through the same narrow lanes as 500,000 people on foot. And so the night belongs to wheels. From dusk until dawn the city roars. Wagons loaded with grain, marble, timber, amphorae of wine and oil. Carts carrying building materials for the endless construction that Rome never stops doing. Animals, oxen, mules, the occasional camel, their hooves loud on the stone. The Roman knights are not quiet. They are the logistical heartbeat of an empire, and they are relentless. The Roman writer Juvenal complained about this bitterly. He described the noise of the city at night as incompatible with sleep, a constant grinding and clattering that kept the poor awake in their high-floor apartments, while the rich, in their ground-floor houses with thick walls and courtyards, slept in relative peace. This is one of the oldest documented complaints about urban noise in human history. 2,000 years ago, a Roman satirist was writing what amounts to a Yelp review about how loud his neighbourhood was at night. Nothing, it seems, is new. The bakers are already awake. They have been awake for hours. Bread in Rome is not a luxury. It is a fundamental right almost. The annona, the grain supply, is one of the most carefully managed systems in the empire. Every day, ships arrive at the port of Ostia carrying Egyptian grain. It is milled, distributed, sold, given away to citizens who qualify for the grain dole. The bakeries of Rome, and there are hundreds of them, archaeologists have identified more than 30 in Pompeii alone, work through the night so that the city wakes to fresh bread. The smell of it baking, mixing with the smoke and the animal smell of the pre-dawn streets, is the smell of Rome waking up. A baker named Marcus has been working since the second hour of the night. His bakery is on the ground floor of an insula, one of the tall apartment blocks that house most of Rome's population. The millstone turns in the back room, driven by a donkey walking in slow, patient circles. The oven is a stone dome, fired with wood, reaching temperatures that would blister your hand if you held it near the opening. Marcus shapes the loaves with practiced speed, round, scored on top, divided into 8 sections so they can be broken easily. He has made this same loaf 10,000 times. His hands do not require instruction. Above him, in the floors of the insula, the city sleeps fitfully. The higher the floor, the cheaper the rent, and the more precarious the existence. Ground floor apartments are the most desirable. Safer from fire, easier to escape, quieter from street noise from above, though noisier from the street itself. Top-floor apartments are cramped, thin-walled, sweltering in summer and freezing in winter, and in constant danger from the fires that sweep through Roman apartment blocks with terrifying regularity. The city has fire brigades, the vigils, 7,000 men whose job is to patrol the streets at night, watch for fires, and respond when they break out. They are also, effectively, the night police. They carry buckets and hooks and a practical Roman understanding that some fires cannot be saved, only contained. Dawn in Rome does not arrive gently. It arrives like a door being thrown open. The moment the sun breaks the horizon, the city erupts. The night carts and wagons pull to the side or disappear into warehouses. The streets fill almost instantly with pedestrians. The Roman day begins early and moves fast. Shops open their shutters, which fold back to reveal counters at street level, where hot food is served directly to passers-by. Rome's insulae generally lack kitchens, the fire risk is too high, and so most Romans eat out. The streets are lined with thermopolia, the Roman equivalent of a fast food counter, where large clay pots set into stone counters keep food warm. Bread, stew, wine mixed with water, olives, cheese, beans cooked soft. For most Romans, this is breakfast, eaten standing up, on the way to wherever they are going. The streets of Rome are not wide. Even the major thoroughfares are narrow by modern standards, and the side streets, the vici, are barely wide enough for two people to pass comfortably. They are paved with large, irregular stones of basalt, worn smooth by centuries of feet, and raised sidewalks, the equivalent of pavements, run along each side. Across the streets at intervals sit large stepping stones, allowing pedestrians to cross without stepping into the central channel, where water, animal waste, and the general overflow of city life flows. Rome has a sophisticated sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, one of the oldest in the world, and public fountains fed by aqueducts on nearly every corner. The water is free, constant, and cold. People fill their jugs here, wash their faces, let their animals drink. The fountains are the social centres of the neighbourhood. A woman named Livia, not the empress, just a woman with a common name, lives on the second floor of an insula near the Forum of Augustus. She's a freedwoman, formerly enslaved, now free and running a small business selling dyed cloth from a stall in the market nearby. She wakes before dawn, dresses in her tunica and wraps herself in a palla, the large rectangle of fabric that Roman women drape over themselves in a dozen different ways depending on the occasion. She has a small brazier in her room for warmth, and a clay lamp that burns olive oil through the night. She checks on her two children, a girl of 8 and a boy of 6, still asleep on their shared bed. She goes downstairs, buys a piece of bread and a cup of watered wine from the thermopolium on the ground floor of her building, and begins the walk to her market stall. The Forum is already busy. The Forum Romanum, the original ancient heart of Rome, is both a political and commercial space, surrounded by temples, law courts, the rostra where speeches are given, and the endless traffic of a city that never stops having business to conduct. Lawyers are already gathering outside the basilicas where the courts sit. Clients are making their way to the homes of their patrons. The salutatio, the morning greeting, is a ritual of Roman social life that everyone understands. Every man of status has clients, people of lower rank who depend on him for favours, legal support, food, money. Every morning they come to his house to pay their respects. Every morning he receives them and distributes his attention like a currency. The streets are loud with language, Latin, obviously, but also Greek. Rome is a bilingual city, Greek being the language of education and culture, and the eastern half of the empire, Aramaic, spoken by traders from Syria and Judea, Egyptian, the languages of the Gauls and Germans brought by soldiers and slaves. Rome at its height holds perhaps 1 million people, drawn from every corner of the known world, and its streets sound like it. The city is not ethnically homogeneous. It never was. It is a meeting point, a gravitational centre that pulls people from everywhere and folds them into something new. The Roman day is divided into 12 hours, but Roman hours are not like modern hours. They divide the period of daylight into 12 equal parts, which means a summer hour is longer than a winter hour. This makes timekeeping genuinely complicated, and Romans are aware of this complexity in a way that modern people, with their fixed 60-minute hours, are not. A sundial in December tells a different story than the same sundial in June. Clocks, water clocks, or clepsydrae exist and are used in the courts to time speeches, but most Romans navigate time by the position of the sun and the rhythm of the city's activities rather than by precise measurement. The morning hours are for business, the law courts are in session, the markets are at their busiest, the workshops, and Rome is full of workshops, their open fronts giving onto the street, the sounds of hammering and sawing and the smell of hot metal and wood and leather filling every street, are at full production. A fuller's workshop treats and cleans wool and cloth, using a combination of urine, collected in pots placed outside for the public to use, which they do, water and clay. The workers stand in large vats and tread the cloth underfoot, a process that is hot, wet, and smells exactly as you would expect. Fullers are essential to the Roman textile industry. They are not glamorous. They know this. A young man named Titus is an apprentice to a metalworker near the Tiber. He is 17, recently arrived in Rome from a small town in Campania, and the city still overwhelms him. The scale of it, the noise, the crowds, the buildings that seem to him impossibly large, has not yet become ordinary. Every morning he walks from his shared room in the Subura district, the most densely populated and notoriously rough neighbourhood in Rome, through streets that are already packed, to the workshop where he is learning to cast and work bronze. His master is a Greek freedman named Demetrius, who makes everything from decorative door handles to surgical instruments to the small bronze votive offerings that Romans leave at temple shrines. Demetrius is exacting and occasionally temperamental, and is teaching Titus things that will make him a living for the rest of his life. The Roman economy runs on skilled labour. Slaves perform much of the heavy and domestic work. Rome's economy is built on slavery in ways that are impossible to separate from its functioning. But free workers, freedmen and women, immigrants and citizens of every class fill the city's workshops and markets. The guilds, the collegia, organise workers by trade. Bakers, fullers, carpenters, doctors, teachers. They provide social support, communal burial funds, and a sense of professional identity. They meet regularly in their own buildings, eat together, elect officers. They are, in function if not in name, trade unions. By midday the pace slows. The Roman midday break is serious. In the heat of a Roman summer, and Rome is hot, genuinely uncomfortably hot in July and August, sensible people stop working and rest. Shops close their shutters, the courts break, the streets thin out. This is the hora sexta, the 6th hour, and it belongs to sleep and shade and the quiet consumption of the midday meal, eaten at home or in the shade of a colonnade. The city will re-emerge in the afternoon, but for now it breathes. In the early afternoon, Rome goes to the baths. This is not an exaggeration. The thermae, the great public bath complexes, are among the most extraordinary institutions the Romans ever created, and not primarily for reasons of hygiene, though hygiene is part of it. The baths are social spaces of the first order. They are where business is conducted, friendships maintained, gossip exchanged, philosophy debated, and the whole vertical range of Roman society briefly partially equalised. The great imperial baths, the baths of Caracalla, the baths of Diocletian, are enormous. The baths of Caracalla cover an area of about 27 acres. They can accommodate perhaps 8,000 bathers simultaneously. Inside there are hot rooms, warm rooms, cold rooms, swimming pools, exercise courts, gardens, libraries, shops, and spaces for performances and lectures. The walls are covered in marble, the floors in mosaic, the ceilings in painted plaster. These are not utilitarian spaces. They are statements of what Rome believes civilization looks like. Entry is cheap, sometimes free. The baths are one of the few genuinely democratic spaces in Roman life. A senator and a carpenter might use the same hot room on the same afternoon, though they would not socialise as equals. You bring your own towel and your own oil. Romans do not use soap in the modern sense, but instead oil themselves, exercise, sweat, and then have the oil and dirt scraped off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Attendants are available for a fee to do this for you. The sequence is typically cold room, warm room, hot room, back to cold. A circuit that leaves the body feeling extraordinary. Livia goes to the women's section of a smaller neighbourhood bath near her market stall. The Great Imperial Baths are mixed use or have separate hours for men and women depending on the period. The rules change across Rome's history and vary by establishment. She sits in the warm room with two other women she knows from the market. They talk about prices, about a new edict affecting textile imports, about a neighbour whose husband has been gone 3 months on a military posting, about nothing in particular. The steam rises, the marble is warm against her back. For 1 hour of the day the city cannot reach her. The baths also serve a medical function. Doctors recommend specific bathing regimens for various conditions. The warm water eases arthritis. The cold plunge invigorates the circulation. The steam helps respiratory complaints. Roman medicine is a mixture of genuine empirical observation and elaborate theory inherited from Greek physicians, particularly Galen, whose influence on medical thinking will last for over 1,000 years. Some of what Roman doctors do works. Some of it, bloodletting, purging, the prescription of substances that are frankly dangerous, does not. But the baths, at least, are an almost universal good. They keep the city cleaner and its people healthier than most cities of comparable size for the next 15 centuries. Roman food is not what most people imagine. The image of decadent feasts with Romans reclining on couches, eating dormice and vomiting to eat more is real in the sense that it happened. Among the very wealthy, occasionally at the most extreme end of Roman excess, but it represents perhaps 1% of how Romans actually ate. Most Romans ate simply, modestly, and with genuine pleasure in the quality of what they had. The Roman diet is built on the Mediterranean triad: grain, olive oil, and wine. Bread is the foundation, eaten at every meal in enormous quantities. The good bread made from fine wheat flour, and the coarser bread made from cheaper grains. Olive oil goes on almost everything, used for cooking, dressing, preservation, and lamp fuel. Wine is drunk diluted with water. Drinking undiluted wine is considered barbaric, something that foreigners do. The ratio of water to wine varies by occasion and taste, but even the weakest Roman wine is flavoured, fermented, and quite different from water. It is also safer than water in a city of 1 million people, whose sanitation, while impressive by ancient standards, has limits. Fish sauce, garum, is the seasoning that defines Roman cooking. Made from fermented fish, it is pungent, intensely savoury, and present in almost every Roman recipe that survives. Modern researchers have compared it to high-quality Asian fish sauce, or to Worcestershire sauce, and concluded that it is actually quite good. The smell of its production was notorious, and fish sauce factories were banned from city centres by law, but the end product was beloved. Romans put it on vegetables, on meat, on bread, on eggs. They mix it with wine and honey and spices into complex sauces. It is the umami of the ancient world, and once you understand that, Roman food suddenly makes a great deal of sense. The main meal of the Roman day is the cena, eaten in the late afternoon or early evening. For wealthy Romans, this is an elaborate social occasion. Guests are invited, courses are served, conversation and entertainment are provided. For ordinary Romans, it is simpler. A legume stew, bread, olives, some cheese, perhaps an egg or a piece of cured meat if the week has been good. Fresh vegetables from the market. Romans eat an enormous variety of vegetables, many of which we still eat today. Cabbage, leeks, onions, garlic, beans, lentils, turnips, radishes, asparagus, artichokes, fruit in season, nuts. The Roman diet, for those who have enough of it, is actually quite healthy by any standard. Marcus the baker eats at the end of his working day, which finishes mid-morning. He is exhausted in the way that people are exhausted when they have been working since midnight. He goes to a thermopolium 2 streets from his bakery and eats a bowl of lentil soup with bread. not his own bread. He is sick of the sight of it, and a cup of wine. He sits outside on a low bench in the thin winter sun. Around him the city moves and shouts and smells and lives. He is 43 years old, has been a baker since he was 12, and has never left the city. Rome is the only world he knows, and it is sufficient. Rome loves spectacle. This is not a criticism or a psychological observation. It is simply a fact about Roman culture that everything we know about it confirms. The Romans built the Colosseum, the Circus Maximus, the Theatre of Pompey. They created public entertainments on a scale that the ancient world had never seen, and that would not be seen again for many centuries. On the days when the games are held, and there are many such days on the Roman calendar, often more than 100 in a year, the city changes. Work stops. The mood lifts or intensifies depending on the spectacle. People who cannot afford seats crowd around the entrances hoping to hear the roar of the crowd. The Circus Maximus holds perhaps 250,000 people. To put that in perspective, the largest sports stadium in the modern world holds about 130,000. The Circus Maximus is nearly twice that size. It is built for chariot racing, which is the sport that Romans are most passionately devoted to. The 4 racing factions, the blues, greens, reds, and whites, inspire loyalties that cross every boundary of class and status. Emperors have their favourites. Senators bet on the outcome. The charioteers themselves are among the most celebrated figures in Roman life. Some of them earn fortunes, accumulate fans, and receive the kind of devotion that modern cultures reserve for the biggest names in sport. Titus the metalworker's apprentice has a deep and slightly irrational devotion to the green faction. He has had it since childhood, inherited from his father who had it from his father. This is how faction loyalty works in Rome. It passes through families like blood type, almost never changing. On race days, Titus is at the circus before dawn to get a good standing spot. The races themselves are short and violent. 7 laps of the long oval track, the chariots taking the tight turns at the end of the spina, at speeds that frequently result in crashes, horses tangled in reins, charioteers dragged across the stone. The crowd responds to disaster and triumph with equal intensity. By the time the afternoon's racing is over, Titus is hoarse, emotionally spent, and deeply, completely happy. The gladiatorial games are a more complicated thing. They are violent, clearly. People die, sometimes. But the reality of the gladiatorial games is considerably more nuanced than the popular image suggests. Gladiators are expensive, trained, fed, medically cared for, and arena organisers do not want their investment killed unnecessarily. Most fights do not end in death. Many gladiators fight dozens of times over a career. They are celebrities, in their own way, their faces appearing on lamps and cups and wall paintings, their names known to school children. Some are volunteers, free men who choose the life for the pay and the fame. Many are slaves or prisoners with no choice. The moral complexity of this is not something Romans spend much time on. The games are part of the landscape of their world, and the landscape is not questioned. Rome is full of gods. This is not a metaphor. Walk 50 feet in any direction in the city, and you will encounter the sacred. A shrine at a street corner, a temple front rising above the rooftops, a small household altar visible through an open doorway, a painted image of a god on a wall, an offering of flowers and incense at the base of a statue. The Roman relationship with religion is not compartmentalised the way modern secular cultures tend to compartmentalise it. It is woven into every aspect of daily life, from the morning prayer at the household lares to the public sacrifice at the temple, to the gesture made when passing a sacred site. The household gods, the lares and penates, are the most intimate form of Roman religion. Every household has a shrine, the lararium, usually a small niche in the wall of the atrium or kitchen, containing small statuettes of the household gods. Every morning, the head of the household, or a family member, or a trusted slave, makes an offering. A little food, a little incense, a little wine. The gods are asked for protection, for prosperity, for the health of the family. They are not abstract. They are present. They live in the house. The Roman gods of the state religion, Jupiter, Juno, Minerva, Mars, Venus, Mercury and the rest, are managed through a complex system of priests, temples and public rituals that is inseparable from the functioning of the Roman state. The Senate takes auguries before making decisions. The Pontifex Maximus oversees the sacred calendar. Vestal virgins tend the eternal flame in the temple of Vesta at the heart of the Forum. These are not purely symbolic acts. Romans genuinely believe that their relationship with the gods, their pax deorum, the peace of the gods, is what makes Rome function, what allows it to win its wars and feed its people and keep the aqueducts flowing. When things go wrong, the first question is, what have we done to offend them? But Rome is also, by the nature of its empire, a city of imported gods. Isis from Egypt, with her mystery cult and her promise of personal salvation, has temples in Rome and devoted worshippers from every class. Mithras from the east, whose worship takes place in underground chambers called Mithraea, and whose initiates share a sacred meal, is popular among soldiers and men of middling status. The Great Mother, Sibyl, whose ecstatic worship includes music and dancing and states of religious frenzy, has been an official Roman cult since the Punic Wars. Rome absorbs the gods of the peoples it conquers with the same pragmatic thoroughness it applies to everything else. The more gods on your side, the better your chances. Into this religious landscape, in the 1st century CE, come the Christians. They are initially barely noticed. One more Eastern mystery cult among many. Their meetings held in private houses, their numbers small. But something about their message, the equality of all people before God, the promise of resurrection, the personal relationship with the divine, spreads. Slowly at first, then faster. By the end of the 3rd century, they are millions. By the 4th century, an emperor converts. The history of the world Roman family life is organised around the paterfamilias, the male head of the household, who in theory holds absolute legal authority over everyone in it. In theory, this authority is enormous. In practice, Roman family life is considerably more complicated, negotiated and human than the legal framework suggests. Roman women have more legal rights than women in most subsequent European societies until the modern era. They can own property, run businesses, bring lawsuits, inherit and bequeath wealth. Upper-class women are educated. Some are highly educated. The letters, poems and inscriptions that survive show women who are intellectually engaged, politically aware and entirely capable of managing their own affairs. Marriage in Rome is a practical and social institution first, though it is by no means loveless. Marriages among the upper classes are arranged with political and financial considerations in mind, and both parties may have limited say. Among ordinary Romans, the picture is less clear but probably more varied. The Roman love poets, Ovid, Catullus, Propertius, write about desire and obsession, and the pain of love with an intensity that is entirely recognisable. Catullus's poems to the woman he calls Lesbia, probably the real Clodia, a married aristocrat, range from ecstatic devotion to bitter betrayal and cover every emotional territory in between. They are 2,000 years old, and they read like something written last week. Children in Rome are loved extravagantly and lost frequently. Infant mortality is high. Perhaps 1/3 of children do not survive their first year, and many more die before adulthood. Romans respond to this reality in ways that are both practical and heartbreaking. Wealthy families commission elaborate tombstones for children who died at 2 or 3 years old. The inscriptions on these stones, found across the Roman world, from Britain to Syria, speak directly to the dead child, beloved, missed, gone too soon. The grief is not hidden or minimised. It is carved in stone and left for 2,000 years. Livia's daughter is called Fortunata, the lucky one, a name given in hope, as Roman names often are. She's 8 years old and is being taught to read and write at a school near the Forum. Girls in Rome are educated, at least at basic levels, and some receive considerably more than basic education. Fortunata has a talent for numbers that her mother recognises and quietly encourages. She will, if things go well, be able to run a business of her own one day. If things go well. This is a qualification that hangs over every Roman life, for the gap between stability and disaster is not wide, and the city is not forgiving. The Roman evening is the most social time of the day. The cena, if you're lucky enough to be invited to or host one, is a multi-hour event. Guests arrive and recline on couches arranged around a low table. 3 couches, 3 guests per couch is the traditional arrangement, though larger parties are common. The host's status is displayed in the quality and quantity of what is served. A wealthy host offers course after course, eggs and olives to start, then fish or fowl or game, then the main course of roasted meat with elaborate sauces, then sweet things, nuts, fruit, more wine. Entertainment is provided, a reader, musicians, dancers, the occasional poet reciting their work to a hopefully appreciative audience. The Romans recline to eat because it aids digestion. This is the medical opinion, and Romans follow medical opinion when it agrees with what they want to do. The wine flows throughout, mixed with water, spiced and warmed and sweetened depending on preference. Conversation ranges from the trivial to the profound. Philosophy is a popular topic at dinner among the educated. Stoicism is the dominant philosophical tradition of the Roman elite, with its emphasis on duty, reason, acceptance of what cannot be changed, and the equal dignity of all rational beings. The man who in the morning whipped a slave for breaking a cup might in the evening quote Seneca on the equal humanity of all people without apparent awareness of the contradiction. Romans are, in this way, entirely human. Titus does not go to elegant dinners. He eats with the other workers in the insula where he rents his room. A communal meal of bread and beans and olives cooked over a shared brazier in the courtyard. It is not elegant. It is good. The other men at the table are a carpenter from Gaul, a Syrian trader in spices, a retired soldier from North Africa who has a scar that crosses his entire left cheek, and who is the most peaceful man Titus has ever met. They drink rough wine and argue about the races and tell stories from their hometowns and fall quiet as the evening deepens. This is how most of Rome actually spends its evenings. Not in marble dining rooms, but in courtyards and thermopolia, and the doorways of insulae, eating simple food with whoever is nearby. As the night comes on, the city changes again. The honest citizens, as the Romans like to call themselves, go home. The streets thin and darken. Rome has no street lighting in the modern sense, and the city at night is lit only by the moon, by lamps in windows, and by the torches of those wealthy enough to have slaves carry lights before them. Walking alone at night in Rome is not entirely safe. Muggers, grassatores, are a real hazard, particularly in the narrow streets of the Subura. Juvenal again complains about this, adds it to his list of the city's insults. The sensible poor stay home after dark. The sensible wealthy have escorts. Rome eventually falls. In 476 CE, the last Western emperor is deposed by a Germanic chieftain. The city itself is not destroyed. It continues to exist, to be inhabited, to remain in some form the centre of things. But the empire that organised half the known world for 5 centuries is gone. The question of why Rome fell has occupied historians for centuries and will probably never be fully resolved. The answers range from military overextension to economic decline to climate change to the lead in the water pipes, to the rise of Christianity to the sheer impossibility of governing a territory of that size with the tools available. Perhaps all of these things are true, perhaps none of them is sufficient alone. But what Rome left behind is so woven into the fabric of the modern world that it is nearly impossible to see, like the air. The calendar you use every day is essentially Roman. Julius Caesar reformed it, Augustus refined it, and it has been adjusted but not fundamentally changed since. The months are named for Roman gods and emperors. The concept of the 7-day week, the hours of the day, the division of the year, Roman. The languages of France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Romania, Latin, transformed by time. English, which is not a Romance language, carries thousands of Latin words through French and directly through the church and scholarship. Law, the legal systems of most of Western Europe descend from Roman law. The idea that there are objective legal principles, that law should be written down and publicly available, that an accused person has rights. Roman. The roads. The Romans built roads across Britain, France, Spain, North Africa, the Middle East, and large parts of Central Europe. Some of these roads are still in use today, not the original surface, but the route, the straightness, the logic of connection that the Romans laid down and that subsequent centuries followed. The expression, "all roads lead to Rome," is not purely metaphorical. They did. Every milestone in the empire measured its distance from the golden milestone in the Forum. You could, in theory, walk from the Scottish border to the Persian Gulf on Roman roads and never lose your way. The aqueducts. Rome's water system brought clean water from sources sometimes 60 miles away, through tunnels and over-arched bridges, into the city by gravity alone. No pumps, no electricity, just engineering and the patient accumulation of expertise. At its peak, Rome's aqueducts delivered over 1 million cubic meters of water to the city every day. Some of these aqueducts still function. The Aqua Virgin, built in 19 BCE and restored, still supplies water to Rome today, including to the Trevi Fountain. And then there is the idea of Rome itself, the idea that a city could be the centre of something vast, that law could govern millions who had never met each other, that citizenship, belonging to a polity, having rights within it, was a meaningful identity that could be extended to people regardless of where they were born or what language they spoke. Rome is the first large-scale experiment in the idea that a political community could transcend ethnicity and geography. It worked imperfectly, with enormous violence and injustice for 5 centuries. The imperfection does not erase the experiment. The experiment does not erase the imperfection. Both things are true. It is late evening in Rome. The carts have not yet begun their night run, but you can hear them assembling at the city gates, waiting for the moment when they are allowed in. The last light is off the Palatine Hill, where the emperors live in palaces that look over the Forum and the city spread below. The temples are dark outlines against a sky that is beginning to show its stars. Marcus the baker is already at his oven. He has slept through the afternoon and the evening and woken in the deep dark of the second hour of the night, as he always does, and put his hands to the flour, as he always does. His bread will be ready before dawn. The city will wake to it. Livia has checked on her children, banked the small brazier against the cold, and lain down on her bed. Fortunata is asleep beside her, her breathing even and slow. Outside the window, the city makes its night sounds. The cartwheel's beginning now, a dog, someone laughing 2 buildings away. She's been awake since before dawn. She's asleep in moments. Titus is on his back on his narrow bed looking at the ceiling. The retired soldier from North Africa is already snoring in the next room. Through the small high window he can see a piece of sky. Not much, just a strip between the buildings, but there are stars in it. He's thinking about the races, about a technique the Green Charioteer used on the 3rd turn of the 5th race, a slight adjustment of the reins that brought the horses through the corner faster than it should have been possible. He's thinking about how everything, if you look at it long enough, has a technique, a way of being done well or badly, a right way that takes years to find. He falls asleep still thinking about it. The city roars around him. The aqueducts flow. The water in the fountains catches the moonlight. Somewhere a temple lamp burns through the night for a god who may or may not be listening. The Tiber runs south toward the sea, as it has for as long as there has been anyone to watch it run. Rome does not sleep, but tonight, for a few hours, it rests. And so can you. This has been Midnight Chronicle. Sleep well wherever in the world you are.